Today, we're diving into a revolution that didn't just change how we eat, it completely reshaped where we live, how we work, and honestly, how many of us are even on this planet. And nope, this isn't a story about kings or armies, it's about soil, science, and steel.
It sounds a little crazy, right? How could a simple plow and a bit of wire build the world we know today? Well, that's the exact question we're going to unpack. How a handful of farming innovations totally re-engineered human society. So, let's get into it. So, what are we actually talking about here? The second agricultural revolution. Basically, from the 1600s to the 1800s, people started applying all the new, shiny ideas from the Industrial Revolution to farming. The goal? Super simple. Grow a whole lot more food. The results, though, they were anything but simple.
To really get just how massive this transformation was, you first have to understand what the world was like before it all happened. Let's paint a picture of farming before the machines showed up, in a world that was frankly hungry for change.
You know, for most of human history, this was just reality. Farming was this back-breaking, all-day, everyday struggle, pretty much just to survive. You grew food for your family, maybe your village. Everything was powered by muscle, yours or your ox's, and it was incredibly inefficient. It basically locked almost everyone to the land.
But then, things started to shift. Innovators and scientists began looking at this ancient practice and asking a really simple question. Hey, can we do this better? And the answer came in the form of some brand new tools that would spark an absolutely incredible revolution.
Okay, so here's a quick roadmap of how it all went down. It really kicks off in Britain, and then it spreads, getting supercharged by a few key inventions. You've got the steel plow in 1819, the absolute game changer that was the reaper in the 1830s, and yeah, even something as simple as barbed wire ends up playing this huge role. So let's start with that first big breakthrough, the steel plow. Now before this, farmers were using these heavy iron or even wooden plows. Imagine trying to break through the thick, tough soils of the American Midwest with one of those. It was a constant struggle.
The impact of just changing the material was, well, it was staggering. Steel was way stronger, but it was also slicker, so it didn't get all gunked up with soil. Suddenly, a single farmer could cultivate land that was basically impossible to farm before. This didn't just make the work easier, it unlocked millions of acres for farming and sent crop yields through the roof.
Okay, so you've used your fancy new steel plow to plant more crops than ever. Awesome. But how are you going to harvest all of it? That's where the McCormick Reaper comes into the picture.
See, before the Reaper, harvest time was a huge bottleneck. You needed a whole crew of people swinging scythes all day long. But this new machine, pulled by a couple of horses, could do the work of 5 people. Now here's the crucial part. It completely broke the link between how big your harvest was and how many people you needed to bring it in. That right there made large-scale commercial farming possible for the first time ever.
And this is so cool because it shows it wasn't just about machines. Science was changing everything. I mean, to get bigger crops, you need better fertilizer. So we went from using the usual stuff, like manure, to importing super potent bird droppings, guano, all the way from Peru. And then came the big leap. Developing mass-produced chemical fertilizers. We were literally engineering the soil for maximum output. So, with way more food than ever before, the very fabric of society started to stretch and change. This revolution wasn't just happening out in the fields, it triggered a massive movement of people, what you could call the great human reshuffling from the farm right into the factory.
This shows a really key idea in demographics. For most of history, you had high birth rates, but you also had high death rates, so the population stayed kind of stable. But with more food, people started eating better and living longer. Suddenly, death rates plummeted, but birth rates stayed high. This pushed whole societies into what's called Stage 3, a period of absolutely explosive population growth.
And right here is the domino effect that really defined the whole era. As machines like the plow and the reaper made farms hyper-efficient, you just didn't need as many people working the land. So, where did they all go? Well, they moved, in huge numbers. They left the countryside and flooded into the cities to work in all the new factories. This revolution on the farm directly fueled the revolution in the cities.
At the exact same time, the land itself was being totally reorganized. In places like Britain, new laws called the Enclosure Acts took all these small common plots of land and consolidated them into huge, privately owned fields. Now this was brutally efficient for sure, but it also forced countless families off the land their ancestors had farmed for generations. Farming wasn't just a way of life anymore, it was becoming big business. Look, the progress here was undeniable. It fed a world that was growing fast. But it's also really clear that all these changes came at a cost, creating brand new challenges that, frankly, we're still wrestling with today. This table really lays out the trade-offs perfectly, doesn't it? The upsides were huge. Farming got easier, crop yields went through the roof, we could feed more people than ever. But there was a steep price. This new, intense style of farming sucked nutrients out of the soil, which made us dependent on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And all of that led directly to more pollution and more CO2 emissions, basically setting the stage for the environmental problems we're facing right now.
So what does all this history really mean for us today? The truth is, the world you and I live in was literally forged by the changes that started in those fields hundreds of years ago.
The legacy of this revolution is right there on your plate. I mean, think about the global staples we all rely on. Wheat for our bread, corn in just about everything, soybeans, potatoes, rice. The massive systems of production that get these foods to our tables, they were born in this era. The very foundation of our modern diet is a direct result of these innovations.
And that leaves us with a really critical question. The last revolution solved the problem of scarcity, but in its place, it created a new problem of sustainability. As we look at a future with a changing climate and a population that's still growing, the challenge is pretty clear. So the big takeaway here is that we need a third revolution, one that can feed the world without costing us the earth. The question is, what will that look like?